Hey everyone, welcome back to Rather Be Visin. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to be taking you through 5 things that I learned when I was first starting out with Tableau that really changed the way that I could use it. Now these are all quite small little things, but there's little hints and tips that just make doing things within Tableau a little bit easier. So without further ado, let's hop into Tableau and have a look at my number 5. So here we are in Tableau. So I've got this dashboard here, not the prettiest dashboard, but all too often I was trying to add something into my dashboard. So let's say I want to add in an image. When I dragged it in, it's trying to place it within the tiled layout. Now, it's very easy to change this to floating. I can click this button down at the bottom here, and then I can bring it in as a floating object, but I'm not that smart, so sometimes I forget to press that button. The good news is there's an easy way to quickly change the object that you're dragging in into a floating object. So I'm going to go back to selecting tiled. I'm going to be dragging in my image. If I hold down the shift key, it then changes it to floating. So I can then drop that down. I can choose my image. Let's go for a nice bar chart here. And then I can stick that in the top corner as a floating object. So if you do forget to switch over to that floating button down at the bottom, you can hold shift and it will change whatever you're dragging on into a floating object. And it works the other way around as well. If you're selected floating and you actually want it to be tiled, if you press shift and hold shift as you drag it in, then it will change it into a tiled object. In at number 4, we have a tip here that's going to make clearing your sheets so much easier. So all too often, I would come into someone's workbook, I'd be duplicating sheets and then I'd be taking stuff out to get down to what I needed. But if I needed to completely clear this sheet, I could painstakingly go through and select all of these, holding down Control and then press the delete key. But this magic button up the top here is going to clear your sheet. So you can also do it by doing Alt, Shift and Backspace. And if you click that, that's going to wipe everything off of the sheet and give you a blank space to work on. So if ever you find that you've gone way down the rabbit hole, you've got too many things in your view, you need to just start afresh, you can quickly click that button and it's going to get rid of everything on the page for you. In at number 3 is applying filters to multiple worksheets. So as you can see with my cool dashboard here, I've got my discount, I've got my profit, and I've got my sales. And if I hop into these sheets, I might want to apply a filter onto these. So I might want to apply an order date filter to have a look at years, and I just want to have a look maybe at 2022. So now that I've applied that to this sheet, if I go back to my dashboard, it's applied that to my sales, but it's not applied it to my profit and my discount. So what I could do is I can go into my profit and I could apply that same filter here and then hop into my discount sheet and do the same. But what I like to do is, especially because I want these 3 sheets to be filtered at the same time, is I can come into my filters on my sales, I can right click on it, I can then say apply to worksheets, and I can do selected worksheets. So I can select that and I can say I also want this to apply to my profit and my discount. Now, if you're working with a particularly large data set, you might have a data set that's got all years in there from 2000 or from whenever your business began. What you can do is you can actually apply filters to every sheet that is using this data set. So all using this data source will apply this filter to any sheet that is using this data source. So those 2 options really save me a lot of time and just make things a lot more straightforward, especially if you're working on a complex dashboard with multiple sheets and you know that there's certain ones you always want to filter down to the same level no matter what you're doing. Okay, and in at number 2, we have measure names and measure values. So as I often need to do, let's say we are building out a nice table of data. So I'm having a look at my customers, what date they made an order, their delivery mode. And then I want to have a look at all of the measures that we have within this. So we've got sales, quantity, discount, profit, and profit ratio. And all too often, what I was finding myself doing is I'd be dragging measure values into the show me, and then it would do something a bit like this. So it would bring in all of my measure values, it would put it onto text, and there'd be overlapping. Now we can fix this by bringing measure names up into columns. That's then going to give me the titles all the way across. And then what I was doing back in the day is I was then going through and going, well, I don't want the count of orders because I know that that's one, because that's the way I've got this set up. I don't need the count of people, don't need the count of returns, so I'd have to select those and delete them out. And so ultimately, it was a really long-winded way of getting what I needed to. And using the EU Superstore, nice and easy because it's quite a small data set, it's quite quick to run. But if you're using a different type of data source, then you might find that this is taking forever to run the query. So what you can do instead is when you're building out your table, so I'm going to bring in my order date again, I'm going to bring in my customer name, and I'm going to bring in my delivery mode. What we can do instead is if I bring in my sales and I hover that over the ABC, you can see I get that little show me pill appear. If I drop that down, I've then got my sales. Now if I bring in my profit and I do the same thing, I hover it over where those ABCs were, where now the sales values are. When I drop that down, you'll see that two things have happened. Firstly, my profit and my sales have moved down into a new card called measure values down here. My measure values has been put onto text and it's automatically invoked measure names into my columns, so I've got my column headings. Now what I'm able to do is just very quickly and easily bring in both my quantity and my discount into my measure values card, and it's got them nicely laid out within the table, and I've not got any overlapping numbers, I've not got anything that I need to take out. So within Tableau, when you start to drag in more measures into your tabular view here, eventually, when you go to two measures, it's going to then invoke measure names and measure values. And it's a lot quicker to do it this way rather than the way that I was doing first, where you first bring in measure values. Okay, and now my favorite thing that I wish I knew when I first started using Tableau, and that is the right click and drag to select the aggregation. So you might have seen me do it a couple of times through this video, but if I've got my order date, let's bring that on to rows. You can see that whenever I bring in a date, it's going to default to being the highest level within that date hierarchy, which it tends to be year. And so if I want this to be month, I'll have to right click here and I'll say, actually, I want to see month of order date. Or if I want it to be continuous, then I'll need to come down to the second batch and say month, and it'll give me my month of order date. Now, when we're working within Tableau, we might need to move a little bit quicker. And what we can do is if we right click and drag in our order date, straight away it gives us the option of how we want to aggregate this. So I can straight away go and say, actually I want it to be months, actually I want it to be month and year, or I want it to be continuous months. So we can do it through here, and this saves me so much time, and it's so much quicker than dragging in year and then going, oh, actually I need it to be this way or that way, and faffing around changing the options. But it doesn't just work for dates. Actually, let me bring in that day again. It doesn't just work for dates. You can also use it for your measures. So if I bring in discount, for example, you can see that my defaults aren't set up properly here, so it's doing the sum of discounts, so it's wrong in here because it's summing up my discounts, actually needed to be an average. What I can do is I can right click and drag my discount in, and again, when I let go of that, it's going to tell me how, or ask me how I want to drop this field. So I actually want this to be an average. And if I change that to text, you can see I've now got my average discount values in there. So this is really handy if you know that you have your default for sales, for instance, we have that as the sum. So if I bring that in, it's the sum of sales. But I know if actually I want to see the average, I don't have to bring it in and then click on the drop down menu here and then go to measure and then to average to get it to be average. I can do it in just one fell swoop by right click and dragging it in, and then I'm able to select average. And there you have it. There was 5 things that I wish I knew when I first started using Tableau. Hopefully some of those or all of them will go to help you. Is there something that you learned when you were first starting out with Tableau that you wish that you knew sooner? Please let me know in the comments below. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, all that good stuff. Stick around for more tips, and thanks for watching.